Chase and they run, beg and they lose respect, explain and they find new objections. 3 patterns, same result, you smaller, them in control. And the painful part is, you already knew this. You felt it every time the chase produced more distance instead of less. Every time the apology produced less warmth than the one before it. Every time the explanation ended with the same doubt wearing a different question. You felt it. You just did not have the words to name what was happening to you. What was happening is this. Every time you chased, you told them the distance was acceptable. Every time you begged, you handed them authority over your emotional life. Every time you explained, you confirmed that your decisions require their approval before they can stand. 3 different behaviors. 1 identical message. I need your response more than I need my own peace. That message is the source of everything that has been going wrong. And the moment you stop sending it, everything changes. Today we are going through 7 principles. Each one is a different angle on the same fundamental shift. From chasing to building, from begging to becoming, from explaining to simply being so undeniably real that the explanation becomes permanently unnecessary. These are not motivational ideas. They are operational ones. They change how you move, how you respond, how you spend the hours of your one life. And they produce results that the chasing and begging and explaining never could. Stay to the end. The last principle is the one that makes all the others make sense. Whether you are watching this at midnight, finally done with chasing, or in the morning, ready to stop explaining yourself to people who were never really listening, comment below, "My silence is my power." Number 1. Chasing is not love. It is fear wearing love's clothes. Learn to tell the difference before it costs you everything. The chase feels like love. That is the trap. If it felt like fear, you would stop immediately. But it does not feel like fear. It feels like caring, like devotion, like the kind of commitment that romance has taught you to see as virtue. You keep showing up. You keep reaching out. You keep making yourself available, and every time you do, you tell yourself, this is what love looks like. This is what it means to fight for something. But watch what the chase actually produces. Not what you intended it to produce, what it actually produces. The person you are chasing is not moved closer by the pursuit. They are moved further. Not because they are cruel, because the chase itself communicates something that no amount of genuine feeling can override. It communicates that the distance is acceptable to you, that you will absorb the asymmetry indefinitely, that the dynamic of them having something you need is a dynamic you will maintain through the consistency of your pursuit. You are not just chasing a person, you are training a dynamic. And the dynamic being trained is the one where you chase and they receive the chase as confirmation that they can continue doing exactly what they are doing. Epictetus wrote, "Seek not that the things which happen should happen as you wish. Wish that things which happen be as they are, and you will have a tranquil flow of life." The person worth having in your life will not require you to chase them into it. Their presence will be voluntary. Their movement toward you will not depend on the maintenance of your pursuit as its fuel. When you stop chasing, one of 2 things happens. The person notices the absence and moves toward you, or they do not move. And either outcome is information the chase was preventing you from receiving. The chase was too busy generating hope to allow for clarity. If they move when the chase stops, you discover the relationship was more real than the asymmetry suggested. The chase was never required. They were always capable of choosing you. They just had no reason to while you were making it so easy not to. If they do not move, you discover something more important. That what you were chasing was not what you needed. That the loss turns out to be survivable. That you are more complete without the chase than you were inside it. Stop the chase. Address the fear underneath it directly, and discover that what you were running after was never as necessary as what the running was preventing you from building. Your stillness is more powerful than your pursuit. It has always been. Number 2, begging destroys the thing you are begging for, and then it destroys you, in that order. Begging has a result that arrives before you get what you asked for, and that result makes everything worse. Before the apology comes, before the attention returns, before whatever you are asking for is briefly restored, the moment the begging begins, you have already communicated the most important information in the interaction, that you do not believe you deserve what you are asking for, that your need alone is not sufficient reason for it to be met, that you require their agreement that your need is legitimate before you can claim what you came for. You handed them the authority over whether your need matters. And people with authority over your needs do not treat those needs the same way as people who simply love you and want to meet them. Authority changes the dynamic. Always. The moment they have it, the moment the begging gave it to them, everything about how they relate to you has shifted. Authority changes the dynamic. The moment they have it, everything about how they relate to you shifts. They begin managing your needs rather than simply responding to them, calibrating how much to give, when to give it, what to withhold. And they do this not as calculated cruelty, but as the natural behavior of someone who has been given a role and is inhabiting it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect. Every time you begged and got what you asked for, you did not win. You established the price of what you needed, and the price was your dignity. Dignity spent that way does not refund itself when the transaction is complete." Miyamoto Musashi wrote, "Do not pursue the remnants of your enemy. Do not pursue the withdrawal of someone who has chosen to withdraw. The pursuit does not change the direction of their movement, it changes only the cost to you. When you stop begging, when you allow the withdrawal to simply be what it is, without converting your suffering into a performance designed to reverse it, you encounter something the begging was permanently preventing. You discover your own flaw, the level of completeness that exists in you, independent of whether the thing you were begging for is present or absent. And that discovery changes the nature of every relationship that comes after it. You stop entering relationships from the position of someone who cannot survive without the specific thing this person offers. You enter from the position of someone who chose to be here, who finds genuine value in being here, who is here by choice rather than by desperation. That shift is the difference between a relationship built on mutual genuine choice and a relationship built on one person's inability to tolerate the alternative. Your dignity is not negotiable. It never was. Number 3. The explanation you keep giving is not changing their mind. It is confirming their power over you. Every explanation you give to someone who has already decided confirms one thing, that their approval is required before your decision can stand. Not their understanding, their approval. Because if it were just understanding, you would say it once clearly and stop. Understanding either arrives or it does not. You cannot add it through repetition. But approval can be lobbied for, campaigned for, argued toward through multiple framings of the same position in the hope that one of them produces the response the others did not. And that is what the over-explanation is. A campaign for approval dressed as a desire for understanding, and campaigns for approval have a problem that campaigns for understanding do not. They can run indefinitely, because approval is not a fixed destination that gets reached through sufficient explanation. It is a moving target controlled entirely by the person whose approval you are seeking. They can always find a new angle, a new objection, a new dimension of the explanation that requires further clarification before the approval can be extended. You have been in this conversation, the one where you explained something thoroughly and they responded with a question that required further explanation. And you explained further, and they raised a new concern, and you addressed the concern, and they shifted to a different dimension of the same fundamental doubt. Not because you were explaining poorly, because the explanation was never going to produce the approval. The approval was never available. The conversation was never actually about understanding your choice. It was about maintaining the dynamic in which your choices are subject to their ongoing review. Seneca wrote, "Speak only if it improves upon the silence. Most of what we say in defense of ourselves only weakens us." The person who explains everything signals uncertainty about everything they explain. The settled person states their position once with the calm confidence of someone who does not require ratification, and then inhabits the silence that follows, without scrambling to fill it with more justification. The Japanese concept of MR describes the power of what is not said, the space between words, the pause that carries more weight than the words on either side of it. In the context of the over-explanation dynamic, Ma is what you create when you say what needs to be said, and then stop. You give the other person nothing to push against, no additional material to process through their closed conclusion, no further demonstration of the anxiety that your need for their understanding was generating. And in that space, in the pause that you allowed to exist, rather than filling it with more words, something happens that no explanation ever produced. The other person is left alone with what you said, without the distraction of your continued justification, without the relief valve of your obvious need for their agreement, just what you said and the silence after it. Some people will sit with that silence and something will shift. Not because your position was better argued, but because the confidence with which you occupied the silence communicated something that the explanation never could, that you have already decided, and you are fine with the decision, whether they come along or not. That communication, delivered not through words but through the quality of your stillness, is more persuasive than any argument you have ever made. And more importantly, it is true. It reflects an actual internal state rather than performing one, the state of someone who made a choice and is living in it rather than standing outside it, defending it. Say it once, clearly, without apology, and then stop. The silence is not the absence of your position. It is your position, communicated at a frequency that words cannot reach. Number 4. Silence is not the absence of power. It is power at its most concentrated. Most people never learn this. The culture lied to you about silence. It told you that silence means nothing, that if you are not speaking, you have nothing to say, that if you are not responding, you have no response, that if you are not explaining, you must have something to hide. Every single one of those assumptions is backwards, and the person who figures that out stops being manageable by the people who were depending on those assumptions to maintain their access to you. Because silence is not absence. Deliberate silence, chosen silence, the silence of someone who considered what could be said and decided nothing available improves upon the stillness. That silence is presence in its most concentrated form. It carries the weight of everything it is not saying, and the listener, encountering it, cannot dismiss it the way they dismiss words. They cannot find the angle to push against. They cannot locate the objection. There is nothing to rebut. There is only the silence and what it communicates about the person who chose it. And what it communicates is the one thing that all the chasing and begging and explaining could never produce. That you are not available for this dynamic on these terms, not as an announcement, not as a confrontation, as a simple, permanent, completely unbothered fact. Deliberate silence communicates with a precision that words cannot match. The listener, encountering it, fills it with what they most need to hear or most fear to hear, and what they fill it with tells you more about them than anything your words would have produced. Lao Tzu wrote, Silence is a source of great strength. Those who know do not speak. Those who speak do not know. The person who is genuinely certain does not require the performance of certainty. It is simply present, in the quality of how they move, in the steadiness of their attention, in the unhurried patience with which they wait for the right moment rather than filling the wrong one. In conflict, the silence of someone who chose not to engage removes the oxygen from the fire. In negotiation, the silence after an offer has been made creates pressure that no counter-offer could produce, because the counter-offer gives the other party something to work with, while the silence gives them only the discomfort of an unanswered question. In relationships, the silence that follows a provocation communicates that the provocation was insufficient to generate the desired reaction. In social situations, the composed stillness of someone who was challenged and did not rise to the challenge speaks more clearly about their character than the most articulate defense could have. The practiced silence is a muscle. It is weak at first because you have spent years exercising the opposite muscle, the one that fills every silence, the one that rushes to respond, the one that interprets the absence of words as a problem requiring immediate solution. Building the silence muscle feels uncomfortable initially. The discomfort is the old muscle protesting. Stay with it. The discomfort passes, the capacity grows, and what grows with it is something that cannot be faked or performed or manufactured through any other means. The quality of presence that only belongs to someone who has learned to be comfortable in their own stillness, who does not need the noise to feel real, who does not need the response to feel whole, who can occupy a space without filling it and leave that space more interesting than it was before they arrived simply by having been genuinely, quietly, completely themselves inside it. Your silence is a statement. Make it deliberately. Make it consistently, and watch how the world recalibrates around a person who has stopped competing with their own noise. Number 5. When you stop chasing, you do not become less attractive. You become the person that people who stopped running also find. Stop chasing and something happens that nobody warned you about. Not the thing you were afraid of. Not the permanent loss of the thing you were chasing. Something else. Something that the chase was so loud it was drowning out completely. You get your life back. Not dramatically. Not in a single moment of liberation that announces itself with clarity. Gradually, in the accumulation of days where the energy that was going into the pursuit went somewhere else instead. Into something you were building. Into something that grew when you fed it, rather than retreating when you approached it. Into the version of your own life that the chase was perpetually postponing, because every available unit of your attention was pointed at the thing that was not working rather than the thing that was waiting to be built. And the building does something to you. Not quickly, not dramatically, over time. The way that consistent investment in anything produces compounding returns over time. It makes you more real, more complete, more genuinely yourself in a way that the performance of yourself that the chase required never was. Robert Greene wrote, "The most effective way to demonstrate value is to be genuinely absorbed in something that has nothing to do with the person you want to impress." The person building something real exerts a pull that the person performing building never achieves. The pull comes from the thing itself. From the aliveness of someone who actually cares about what they are doing rather than caring about how the doing looks to whoever is watching. The character that emerges from genuinely investing your energy in your own development, your own work, your own values, is the character that makes you worth knowing. It is an actual fact about who you became when you stopped outsourcing your worth to other people's recognition and started building it from the inside. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present. The person who is fully present in their own life is more compelling than the person who is partially present everywhere, because their attention is scattered across every dynamic that wants a piece of it." Full presence has a quality to it. You feel it when you are in the room with someone who has it. You feel its absence just as clearly. The people worth having in your life are drawn to that quality. They cannot find you while you are chasing. While you are chasing, you are pointed away from them. The stopping turns you around, and what was behind you the whole time finally comes into view. Build, invest in your own genuine development, not to become attractive, to become complete. Completion, the kind that does not depend on anyone else's presence to feel whole, is exactly what the right people have been looking for all along. Number 6. Your boundaries are not walls that keep people out. They are the architecture that makes real connection possible. The person with no boundaries does not have more connection, they have more access. And access is not connection. Access is a transaction. The person who is always available, always accommodating, always adjusting themselves to produce the least friction with the maximum number of people, that person is reachable by everyone and genuinely met by almost no one, because the version of themselves they present is not the real version. It is the managed version, the one that has been continuously edited down to remove the parts that might cause difficulty or disagreement, or the particular discomfort of another person encountering something in you that requires them to adjust to you rather than you adjusting to them. And the edited version, however pleasant it is to be around, is not you. It is you minus the parts that make you genuinely interesting. You minus the edges that create genuine friction and genuine engagement. You minus the real opinions and the actual limits and the honest responses that would have produced real relationship if you had been willing to offer them, instead of the smoothed, accommodated, minimally demanding version that made everyone comfortable and left you exhausted. You cannot connect with someone who is not really there. And you have not been really there. You have been sending a representative. A boundary is not defensive. A wall is defensive. A wall is built to keep things out because you are afraid of what is outside. A boundary is architectural. It defines the space inside which your life actually functions. It says not, I am afraid of what is out there, but here is where I actually live, and what happens inside this space is mine to determine. The distinction is fundamental. Fear builds walls, clarity builds boundaries, and clarity produces something that fear never does. The freedom to be genuinely yourself inside the space you defined. Epictetus wrote, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." The boundary makes this possible in practical terms. Without the boundary, the distinction between what is yours and what is not yours collapses in daily life. You find yourself managing outcomes that were never yours to manage, spending energy on people's responses that were never yours to control, feeling responsible for emotional states that belong to other people and that you were never equipped to fix. The boundary draws the line. Everything on your side you manage with full commitment. Everything on the other side you release. When you establish a genuine boundary, something clarifying happens in the relationships around you. The people who were in your life for what they could access through you discover that the access has changed. Some of them leave. This is not loss. This is information delivered at a lower price than it would eventually have been delivered. They were not there for you. They were there for the version of you that had no limits on what could be taken. Some people stay and adjust. They discover that the relationship with the bounded version of you is more genuine than the relationship with the unbounded version was, because it is based on actual choice. They are choosing to be here, knowing what the terms are. And choice-based presence has a quality that access-based presence never does. It carries the weight of genuine preference, of being here because this person and this relationship specifically are worth being here for. That is the connection that the absence of boundaries was preventing. not despite the limits, but because of them. The boundary created the conditions in which genuine meeting became possible, in which the person who arrived was meeting you rather than the version of you that required no effort to access. Build the architecture, not to keep people out, to create the space in which you actually live, in which what you build belongs to you, in which who you allow in is a deliberate choice rather than an unexamined default. The boundary is not the end of connection, it is the beginning of the kind worth having. Number 7. The life built in silence will say more than everything you were explaining, and it will say it forever. Everything in this video comes down to one thing. Where are you spending the hours of your life? On the chase, on the beg, on the explanation, on the management of how you appear to people who were never that invested in what you were building, or on the building itself? Because the building and the chasing are in direct competition for the same resource: your time, your energy, your attention, your creative capacity, the part of you that is capable of making something from nothing. That resource is finite. Every unit of it that goes into the chase is a unit that does not go into what you were actually here to build. And the cost of that diversion is not felt immediately. It is felt across years. In the gap between where you are and where you could have been if the energy that went into managing other people's opinions of you had gone into your own work instead. That gap is the real cost of the chase. Not the emotional exhaustion, not the dignity spent on the begging, not the time wasted on explanations that changed nothing. The gap, the silent, invisible, completely preventable distance between the life you built and the life you could have built if you had stopped earlier. This person does not need to explain themselves because their life explains itself. Not loudly, not with announcements, with the simple, undeniable presence of someone who has been somewhere real and come back with something to show for it. Every year of genuine building produces this quality of presence. It is not performable. It cannot be manufactured in the absence of the actual building. It can only be earned through the specific, personal, often invisible work of investing your limited life in things that deserve the investment. And it accumulates. This is the part that most people do not fully appreciate until they have lived it long enough to see the accumulation. 1 month of building over chasing makes a small difference. 1 year makes a visible one. 5 years makes a difference that people who knew you before and after cannot ignore. 10 years makes a difference that the person who was still chasing 10 years ago, who was still explaining 10 years ago, who was still begging 10 years ago, cannot access from where they still are. The compounding is real, and it works in both directions. Every year of chasing also compounds. Every year of begging compounds. Every year of explaining yourself to people who are not listening compounds. Not into growth, into the increasingly solid, increasingly comfortable, increasingly hard to leave pattern of a life organized around other people's approval. A pattern that eventually feels less like a choice and more like a personality. Less like a habit and more like an identity. This is how the chase stops feeling like a problem and starts feeling like who you are. Seneca wrote, "Nusquam est qui ubique est." One who is everywhere is nowhere. The person whose energy is everywhere, chasing everything, explaining everything, managing every dynamic, is nowhere. No center, no accumulated momentum, no compounding return on any investment, because every investment was redirected to the next thing that needed managing before it had time to grow into anything. Viktor Frankl wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. The silence is that space. Every moment of not chasing is an exercise of that space. Every moment of not begging trains the muscle that makes the next response deliberate rather than automatic. and the muscle, trained across sufficient repetition, becomes character. Not a character you perform for an audience. A character that is simply what you are when nobody is watching, when there is no audience to perform for, when the only question available is not how do I appear, but who am I when the appearing stops. That character, the one built in the silence rather than in the noise, is the only character that holds under pressure. The performed character dissolves the moment the pressure exceeds the performer's capacity to maintain it. The built character deepens under pressure. Because it is not a surface, it is a foundation, made from the specific, personal, irreplaceable material of a life that was actually lived rather than continuously managed. The life built in silence speaks in a language that no explanation ever reached. It speaks in results, in the visible, tangible reality of something that grew from investment rather than performance, in the quality of presence of someone who has been building while others were talking, in the settled, undefended, completely unhurried confidence of a person who has nothing to prove because the proof already exists and requires no argument from them to remain true. Stop chasing, stop begging, stop explaining. Build in the silence, with everything you have, toward everything that actually deserves it, and let the life you build do the talking. Because it will, and it will do it better than you ever could, and it will do it long after every argument that was ever made in its defense has been forgotten by everyone, including you. 7 principles. 1 direction. The chase was never love. It was fear wearing love's clothes. The begging was never desperation for connection. It was the surrender of self-respect to the temporary relief of having the thing back that was never going to stay. The explaining was never communication. It was performance for an audience that had already decided, and that no amount of thorough performance was ever going to move. And the silence that results from stopping all 3 of these is not emptiness. It is the most present you have ever been. The presence of someone who stopped outsourcing their energy and brought it home, who stopped distributing themselves across every dynamic that wanted a piece and started investing in the one life they were given. What gets built in that silence is permanent in a way that nothing built from performance ever is. The performed version dissolves the moment the performance stops being worth the effort. The built version stands, gets stronger under pressure, requires no maintenance because it was not constructed from appearances. It was constructed from the actual daily, unglamorous work of becoming someone real. Never chase what does not move toward you willingly. Never beg for what should be freely given. Never explain yourself to people who have already decided. And in the space created by these 3 refusals, build the life that makes the explanations permanently unnecessary. The life built in silence speaks the loudest. Every person who has ever built something real discovered this, not from reading it, from living it, from the specific personal experience of redirecting the energy that was going into the chase and watching what happened when it went somewhere worth going instead. If this video gave you permission to finally stop, share it with someone who has been chasing too long and building too little. And remember, your silence is not emptiness. It is everything you are about to build. And what you build in silence will speak long after everything you were explaining has been forgotten.